Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. Yes, this is a radio show. I hear it all the time. Hey, I listened to your podcast. Maybe, but if you heard it on your local radio station, you heard the Outdoor Magazine radio show. Again, my name is Mike Avery. So glad to have you along this weekend as we begin our 3-hour adventure into talking about the great outdoors, primarily here in the great state of Michigan, but occasionally beyond. We talk about hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and wildlife issues and conservation issues and even some wild game cooking. And I'm so glad to have you along with us once again. Well, it's wintertime. It's officially wintertime now. But is it really going to be winter? You might remember Michigan's meteorologist Mark Torregrossa was with me here on the radio show about 6 weeks ago. He said at the time, he said, you know, there is some chance that we're going to get some bad weather in November and December. He said, but once we get into January, he said, you will have made it and you're not going to have much of a winter. You're not going to have a bad winter. Well, guess what? It's almost January. Ice fishermen saying, man, are we going to get ice this year in the southern part of the state? I don't know. I wish I had a crystal ball. But it's not looking good, is it? Not looking good at all. I have more tales of woe to talk about on my quest to shoot a big doe here in Michigan. I told you last week I was still trying. I also told you that I had a lot of things getting in the way and that I had to remind myself that you can't shoot anything unless you're in the woods. You know what? Since we last talked, I haven't been in the woods. I'm disappointed to say that. But, you know, with Christmas right around the corner, a lot of things coming up, a lot of things have to get done, family obligations, church obligations, some Christmas projects I'm working on. Maybe by the time you hear this show, I will be able to sneak out one evening. The wind direction, the forecast doesn't look real good for the next couple of days. And then you know how that week between Christmas and New Year's is. All kinds of things. So I'm running out of time. I think I have reluctantly given up on our lease property. I had high hopes for that property. It isn't a nice piece of property. It's just, it's a hard piece of property to hunt. So I think I'm going to rely on the generosity of some of my friends who have reached out and said, Avery, I feel pity on you. You're obviously a very, very bad hunter. You're very obviously not very good at all. Why don't you come to my place and shoot one of my does because I got them running all over the place? Because we're just not seeing them in the daytime at all. They're coming into the food plots every night. And a couple of our neighbors I talked about, same thing. They talked to the same thing. They said, you know, we got deer, but they're smart now. They've been hunted since mid-September, right? If they're going to survive, they got to get smart. They got to move only at night. I know. Avery, get away from the food plots. Get back into the woods. I get that. But I just haven't been out. I haven't given up. The fat lady didn't sing yet, but I can hear her off in the wings, and she's starting to warm up. Hey, speaking of deer hunting, it's really early for this, but I've had reports of bucks that have shed their antlers already. Antlers, not horns. What's the difference? Cows have horns, sheep have horns, If that bone that grows out of the top of their head doesn't drop every year, if it stays there, it's a horn. If it drops, if it sheds and regrows every year, it's an antler. Deer, whitetails, muleys, elk, moose, those are all antlers. And usually, anywhere from the end of January into March or so, late February, they will shed those antlers. My son James actually told me about 2 different bucks he has seen already that have dropped their racks, shed their antlers. Seems early. It does seem early, but that opens up a whole nother season too, right? I mean, if you didn't get your buck and you want to stay out there and keep track of your whitetail herd, searching for shed antlers is a fun way to do that. I think we have pretty much solved the problem of Westwood One repeating the second hour of the show. And you know how we solved it? Went around it. If Westwood One doesn't want to admit they have a problem, if they don't want to admit the problem is on their end, if they want to say it's something that we're doing, because we're not, we're just going to go around them. So I am cautiously optimistic that this weekend, as you hear the show, at least on most of my affiliates, you will hear all 3 hours of the show. And just a reminder, I do a new show every week. I do 3 new hours every week. I would not repeat a show. I would not repeat an hour. I take this too seriously. I take your time too seriously. I would not waste your time. But that's the joy, right? That's the fun of working of being at the mercy of other people sometimes. Pure Michigan Hunt. Time is running out. You still got time. The Pure Michigan Hunt, I think, is a very cool thing that I don't know if it was the DNR that came up with this or the legislature or who it was that pushed it, but kudos whoever came up with the concept and decided to make this a thing. What it is every year they draw 3 winners from the people who apply for the Pure Michigan Hunt. It costs you $5 to apply. You can apply multiple times. You can apply as many times as you want for $5. The Pure Michigan Hunt winners get a bunch of gear and equipment from, I think, all Michigan-based companies. You get a managed first choice at a managed waterfowl hunt, which I would give away to one of my waterfowl hunting buddies. Not too interested in that. Waterfowl hunting is a whole nother thing. That's a whole different area. That's you got to be hardcore to do that, and I guess I'm not that hardcore. You win a turkey hunt, which I would give to one of my buddies because I think I'm pretty well set on turkey hunting. A bear tag, first season any unit, which you bet I would keep. And then you get that coveted bull elk tag for either the September season or the December season or both. And it's a bull tag. For $5 you can apply. I had a guy at the show last week from the UP, Bob Boudry, who won the Pure Michigan Hunt. He was the first Youper ever to win it. Do you know how many times he applied for the Pure Michigan Hunt? You guessed it, 1 time. And I have since seen a picture of a big bull that he shot, big bull elk. Congrats. Very, very nice. You can apply online. You can apply through the app. You can apply at any license agent. I'll be honest with you, I haven't gone to a store to get a hunting license or a fishing license in a long time now. I just go online and do it. It's so much easier. Michigan.gov/DNR or use the app. I like that app. If I ever shoot my doe, I will use the app to report the harvest so I can go get that meat processed. And then I'll take it over to Michigan Brand and have the rest of it done. Pure Michigan Hunt. Oh, and even though I talk a lot about hunting right now, man, some of my buddies who are out on the water right now are getting big, big walleye. Saginaw Bay, Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair, Detroit River. I'm talking, 11-pound fish out of Saginaw Bay. all summer long, we're out there chasing fish that are 13 inches, 15 inches. I mean, you get a 20-inch fish, that's a good, solid fish. You get a 27-inch fish, now that's a nice summertime fish. So they're out there. They're out there. What else? My website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't forget to check out my live feeds, my live streams, every Wednesday morning at 8:45 from the radio studio. I do a Behind the Mic segment. And then every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, I do a Wednesday Night Live. And let me say one more thing before we take a break. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to your family. You notice I didn't say Happy Holidays. I didn't say season greeting. I said Merry Christmas. I realize that this Christmas season, we have to, for the kids, there's Santa Claus and there's Christmas trees and there's presents and there's, decorations and there's lights and everything else. And that's fine. That's good. I get it. Santa Claus, I get it. The real reason for Christmas is not so Santa Claus can come down your chimney and eat cookies. The real reason for Christmas is to celebrate the birth of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. If you are a person of faith, this is a very, very important and significant celebration. So, Merry Christmas to you and your family. May God bless you this Christmas season. I hope you get a chance to enjoy it with your friends and family. And please remember, Christmas is a celebration of the birth of Jesus. You can see the Outdoor Magazine show on WZTK in Alpena. That's 105.7 FM. You can hear us in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. And you can hear us in Escanaba on WCHT 600 AM 93.5 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Matt Smith Outdoors Realtor. Matt is a longtime friend of mine. He's an expert at finding recreational properties, vacation homes, and he can help your family turn a dream into a reality. Learn more online at Matt Smith Outdoors on Facebook and on Instagram. And by the way, if you're looking for a new home as your primary residence, Matt can help you out there as well. That's Matt Smith Outdoors on Facebook and Instagram. While you are on Facebook and Instagram and everything else online, please go to my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. From there, you can get to all of my social media outlets. I told you before the break, we're going to talk with a friend of mine, Charlie Wiltse, who is a Michigan hunter. I was able to bear hunt with Charlie in White River, Ontario last spring up there with our friend Ron St. Louis of Northern Wilderness Bear Outfitters. But since then, Charlie has been all over the place. I mean, he's a hardcore hunter. There's no doubt about that. But he likes to seek out hunts that are challenging and hunts that for many of us would be a bucket list. And Charlie just got back from one that I think is pretty cool, and I wanted to get him on the air to talk about that. Hey, Charlie, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. I'm doing great. Always great to be on the show.
It's always a pleasure to have you either here on the radio show or on the Primal podcast. You're also a Primal Outdoors pro staffer. That's a pretty cool job right there.
Oh, it's an awesome job. Yeah, I've been working with Primal since 2019. Great products, great people. You get them in the woods, and it helps you kill mature animals.
Well, I don't even want to talk about that right now, Charlie. I'm still out there just trying to kill a Michigan doe, and I haven't had any luck yet. How sad is that?
Well, it's hunting, Mike. It's hunting. Sometimes it all comes together real easy, and sometimes we got to work for it. But that's why we keep doing it. You'll get that doe.
Well, listen. Speaking of working for it, tell me about this latest adventure you were on.
Yeah, I've just recently got back from Wyoming, and we were out in Ten Sleep, Wyoming, around the Hyattville area, so it's north central Wyoming. and was on my first ever mountain lion hunt. I've thought about mountain lion hunting ever since I started, elk hunting out west, and I know the damage that they do to our elk, our cattle, mule deer, whitetails. And, these animals have got to be managed. They are just complete killers. And if you don't manage them, these killers are just going to kill more, and, not a good deal. So they have to be managed, and I've been wanting to do a mountain lion hunt for a long time, so it finally came together. Myself, my good buddy Phil Gibbs, who's been working with Primal for a while, my Uncle Dave, who you met up in Ontario, he came along as the camp cook, and then my good friend Josh Sattler from Idaho also came down to hunt. So had an epic time in Wyoming.
What kind of a hunt was it? Was it it was an archery hunt for one thing, right? A bow hunt.
Yes, yeah. You could use compound bow, crossbow, rifle, but I always choose my first option is my bow and arrow. So yes, I had a bow and arrow, but on these type of hunts, anytime out west, I'm always packing a handgun. I had a 10 millimeter Sig Sauer on my chest because you just never know. So
it's a different world up in those mountains, isn't it?
It sure is. They don't have grizzlies there, but even these mountain lions alone, that mountain lion comes out of the tree the wrong way. You've got to be ready, and if you just got a bow, you can only do so much. But yeah, it's wild out there, and you always got to try to think about what if. So you got to be prepared. What
was the terrain like? What was the elevation?
Okay, so Hyattville, 10 Sleep area, you're right around 5,000 feet. And this year, just like everywhere, they also have a real lack of snow. So we knew going out there, the outfitter, No Wood Creek Outfitters out of 10 Sleep, great people. We knew we were going to have issues. It was going to be tough hunting because of snow. So we were right around 5,000 feet at camp. And then when we could finally get in the snow, Mike, was right around, 6,500, 7,000 feet, but we just weren't getting any fresh snow. But it's the Bighorn mountain range. So you're looking at, you've got smaller mountains, you've got big mountains. There's some areas there where you can see in the distance, that's 10, 11, 12,000 feet of elevation. So it's big country.
Why did you need snow, Charlie?
Well, the main reason you need snow with mountain lions, because really the only way you can hunt these creatures, because they are, they're just an animal that you don't see. You could drive around literally all fall out there, in side-by-sides and horses, and you would never see a mountain lion, never. So really the only way to hunt them is you need to use dogs. And then what you originally have to do is, so in the early morning, so we'd set our alarm, 2:30 in the morning, our alarm would go off. We would be over to Tomei Seafros. He's one of the guides for No Wood. Tommy's originally from Ogama County, so I'll do a little Ogama County shout out. Tommy's the real deal. This guy is just incredible. But anyway, so we'd be to Tommy's place. We'd load up in the buggy. He had a Can-Am crew cab, so he'd have 3 dogs in the back, and then he's got an unbelievable light system around the buggy. So you start going up into the mountains, and like I said, we had just no snow. So finally we'd start hitting some snow, but there was no fresh snow. So you drive 2 tracks anywhere you could go, and you're just looking, you're basically, your head's out the window. It's 3 a.m, and you're just looking for some fresh prints. And that's the way you got to find them. Once you find it, then Tommy, these guys are so good, they can say, okay, that's 6 hours old. That's 2 days old. That's a 140-pound cat. That's a young cat.
Jeez.
It's really impressive.
You got to wait till daylight to let the dogs loose, though, I'm sure, right?
Yes. So you can do all that to try to find the tracks, but you cannot let the dogs loose until daylight. So we just wanted to get up there early because there's other hunters as well. And we just wanted to get up on the mountain early, use those real good lights to try to find the tracks. And if you find that fresh one, then you wait to daylight, and then that's when they'll let the dogs out, and then the dogs will tell you exactly, what's going to happen next.
So what elevation did you end up hunting at?
So we were hunting 6,500 to 8,500 feet. The third morning of the hunt, and that's the morning that we were able to harvest, our mountain lion. We were right around, I think it was about 7,000 feet, Mike.
Do you feel
it was incredible?
Do you feel that? Is that high enough that you feel it, being flatlanders here from Michigan?
You do, yeah. You definitely do feel it. I'm fortunate enough to get out west and hunt quite a bit, so I'm starting to get a little more familiar with it. But you definitely feel it. For me, is anywhere from that 8,000 feet and above, I really start to feel it.
So third day of the hunt, you found tracks. You let the dogs go at daylight. Walk me through the rest of it, Charlie.
Okay. So, yep, we found that fresh track, and Tomei, he got excited. He knew it was fresh, and we were trying to stay optimistic. But again, Mike, without that fresh snow, I mean, we were driving over, just 4-day-old tracks, and we just got lucky. Tomei found that track. So he had 3 dogs that morning, Copper, Ranger, and Gus. And these dogs are just incredible. Their breed they're called walkers. So the technology is awesome. So Tomei has GPS collars on each one of the dogs. He let Copper out first because that's who he feels his strongest dog is. And then he let Ranger go, and then Gus. So Tomei's got a hand-controlled GPS where he's following them on his little 3-4 inch monitor, but then also inside the buggy, and this is just incredible to watch. I've never ever hunted with dogs. There's about a 7-inch Garmin screen inside the buggy. So that morning when he let Copper, Ranger, and Gus go, it is incredible because us as the hunters, and Phil Gibbs was with me for doing content and videoing, one of my best friends, and we're sitting in the buggy just watching this, and it's so hard to explain because it's just incredible to watch how those dogs work, Mike. So Copper would straight line like for 200-300 yards, and we started to get real excited because we knew he was on a good fresh scent, and here comes Ranger and Gus, and then all of a sudden Copper starts doing circles, and then all of a sudden Gus is doing a circle, and then Gus takes off, or Ranger takes off. And to watch that on the screen was just absolutely incredible. Me and Phil were just blown away how these dogs work. It was just unreal. So
do they tree the cat? Is that what the dogs do?
That's the whole purpose of eventually treeing. And sometimes cats will tree quick, depending on snowfall. If there's a lot of snow, they're going to get more tired easy. They'll be more likely to tree. But we didn't have a lot of snow. So as the dogs are on it, we're trying to follow through the mountains what we can. We're limited because we only have such a road system. We're in the buggy. And, they were hitting some areas on the south sides of the slopes where there was no snow. So our big concern was, they're going to lose the scent. So there was a number of times that first, hour or so, the dogs would start circling. Gus would go one way, Ranger would go the other way. And it's just incredible how they all work it out. All of a sudden, Copper figures it out, and he's on a straight line, and the dogs then get following Copper. And we finally got to a point where, Tomei was very, very, very positive that, okay, we got a good cat. The dogs are on him. This cat's very active. So we parked the buggy, and Tommy's like, okay, and this guy's like a gazelle going through the mountains. He's like, all right, guys, just, keep following my tracks. Now we're about 7,000 feet. We got probably 5-6 inches of snow. He goes, just keep following my tracks. I'm going to try to get closer with the dogs. And on his GPS, it'll show when them dogs are in one certain area without moving, which would correspond to them on a tree, it'll actually pop up on his GPS. It'll say treed, Copper treed, Ranger treed, Gus treed. And he had that a number of times, but that cat was so active, he jumped the tree and then take off. So from the time we left the buggy, I had my bow and arrow strapped to my big backpack. We take off, it's snow, it's, icy conditions, and, we're, 7,000 plus feet. So we got to take time because, you don't want to fall. You got your equipment. And it was almost, I think, 2.5 miles by the time we got to Tomei and the dogs.
Hang tight, Charlie. I want to hear the rest of this, but I got to take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine show. We're talking to Charlie Wiltse of Primal Outdoors. He's a Primal Outdoors pro staff for PrimalOutdoors.com, PrimalOutdoors.com. Primal is the company that makes my beloved Wraith 270 see-through ground blind. The rest of the story with Charlie Wiltse on his Western Mountain Lion adventure coming right up. hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Tawas on WIOS, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. You can hear us in Traverse City on WTCM, 580 AM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ, 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Why buy a bunch of different sets of hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set and snap on and zip on an outer shell with a different camouflage pattern? The website, versaskins.com, versaskins.com. And if you need big sizes like 4, 5, 6X, VersaSkins is your source. Check them out online at versaskins.com. Talking now with Charlie Wiltse, a friend of mine and a Primal Outdoors pro staffer who just got back from a western mountain lion hunt. Charlie, last time we left you, you had to travel in the mountains 2.5 miles to get to the treed cat. Was it then treed?
It was treed, yes, yeah. But so we had our final descent to come down. I mean, we're going up and down through two different canyons, and now at this point we're right around 8,000 feet. And the dogs had the cat treed in the bottom of the canyon. It was just a beautiful scenario, a creek running through it. But you got to picture me and Phil for over an hour, trying to keep up. And this last about 800 feet down, and it got steep. And as we're coming down, we hear, I'll never forget this. It was just incredible. You hear Tomei talking with the dogs, and Tomei's going, "Hunters are coming, boys. Hunters are coming." And I mean, it just gets you pumped up, because Tomei wants the dogs, obviously, to stay on the tree. We just kept hearing that, "Hunters are coming." So me and Phil are, we're trying to get down to them, but now it's steep and icy. And my feet come out from under me probably about 150 yards or so down from the bottom. And I just went right backwards. And I immediately think about my scope because my bow and arrow's on my back. Mm-hmm. So Phil's behind me about 5, 6 feet, and I immediately, as I'm on the ground, I twist to the side to get off my bow. I said, "Phil, did you see where I exactly hit? Did my scope hit?" And Phil's like, "Charlie, I watched it. Your scope did not hit, but your quiver smashed up." I was like, "Well, can I keep moving?" He's like, "Yeah." And Tommy's down in that bottom of that canyon, keeping the dogs on the tree. So I get back on my feet. I'm excited. I'm pumped up. But I'm also at that same time trying to get my heartbeat to come down because I know here soon I'm going to be pulling my bow back for one of the most important shots of my life. So literally, Mike, within about 3 minutes, I fall again. And this time I could hear something plastic. I hit the back end of my quiver again, and this time it just shatters. So Phil goes, "Charlie, stop." And I can look to my left, and I got arrows going every direction. I'm like, oh, my goodness. So I had to take my pack off. I literally went down that last 100 yards with all 5 arrows in my left hand, just holding the arrows just to get down to the bottom. It was intense. And then so we got down to the bottom, and, Tommy's got the dogs on the tree, and I, get everything off, get my bow situated, get my rangefinder, everything together. Phil's getting his stuff together because he was running a camera and a GoPro, and so we got everything set up. We cross that creek and get to the tree, and then we start talking with Tomei, and we're looking up at the cat. It was just unbelievable, and it was so cool. At that same time, my best friend Josh from Idaho, him and Cam came down from another mountain range and literally within 5 minutes met us down there. So now the whole crew is together. It was so cool.
And just to keep just to move this along for time's sake, so now you got a lot of eyes on you. So you got a cat in a tree. It's a big shot. You got a lot of eyes on you. The pressure's on.
Pressure's on, yeah. So I get a little long-winded sometimes, Mike.
I know. I don't blame you at all.
So me and Tomei are talking. I'm looking at the angles. I had practiced shooting up in a tree a couple different, times prior to the hunt. So it was not a very far shot, about 10 yards. But, went 30 feet up in the air. The tree was over the edge of the creek, so, that's already elevated higher. But I feel good. I'm getting my footing ready. I'm, getting snow and ice from under me. I'm getting ready to go. Guys, their cameras are running. So I pull straight back. I get on my target. I find that little hair that I want on that cat. But as I'm getting right to that point, I realize I can't go any higher. So I literally have to drop to one knee. And when I dropped to one knee, I don't know what it was, but it made me nervous. I shot, off my knee before. So I'm trying to get my pin back on it, and I'm shaking a little bit, my heart's pumping, but I just found that little spot. I picked out that hair, and that G5 Mega Meat, man, hit the mark, and all of a sudden the guys are going, oh, great shot. You can see the blood. That cat was dead literally in 7 seconds. It fell out of the tree, hit the ground, was dead.
How big a cat, Charlie?
About 130 pounds.
That's a big animal, And again, people say, well, why do you shoot something like this? You have to have predator control. And I don't know if you've had a chance to eat that thing yet, but I've heard mountain lion is outstanding to eat.
Backstraps, Mike, are fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. The meat looks like a wild turkey, the color. Backstraps are fabulous, but just like a bear, got to get that 160 degrees because you could get trichinosis. Nobody wants that.
Charlie, congrats on it.
We got to keep these things under control.
Got to keep them under control. Charlie, congrats on a great hunt. By the way, by the time people hear the show, I will have pictures of your hunt posted on my Facebook page. Again, congrats, my friend, and I look forward to talking again soon.
Always a pleasure, Mike. You take care.
All right, Charlie Wiltse of Primal Outdoors, primaloutdoors.com, primaloutdoors.com, telling the story of a western mountain lion hunt. I've had two other buddies I can think of that went out west on similar hunts, and they say it's just magnificent. The scenery, the physical challenge, and to be that close to a top-tier predator like a mountain lion, how cool is that? We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this first hour with Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in port here on a WPHM 1380 AM. You can hear us in Muskegon on WKBZ 1090 AM and north of the bridge in Newberry, WNBY 1450 AM. Speaking of north of the bridge, this segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by, you know what that sound is. That's the sound of my Rapid River knife opening, the knife that I just pulled out of my pocket, the knife that I carry in my pocket every day. These are great knives. I bought them as gifts for so many people, for my son, grandsons, brother-in-law. My other brother-in-law just gave him the knife the other day, and he said, man, these things are really nice. They are really nice. They are handmade by craftsmen in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. They are guaranteed for life, and man, when you get them from the factory, are they ever sharp. If you need to get it resharpened, if you're like me and have a hard time putting an edge on a knife, you send it back or take it up there to the showroom, and they will sharpen it for you. The showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River, and the website rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us. The showroom's a destination. The knives are traditions, Michigan outdoor traditions, rapidriverknifeworks.us. Speaking of Michigan traditions, Woods-n-Waternews, in my opinion, Michigan's premier outdoor publication, been around for a long time. And the reason they have been so successful for so many years, many reasons, right? They have been around long enough where they have a really good network of writers and people who submit story ideas. They are willing to change and adjust and move with technology. And they've got great people behind the publication, including Tom Campbell, who's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Tom, welcome back. How you doing?
Great, Mike. Thank you very much for those kind words.
Well, I mean, it's how many years now? Pushing 40 years you guys have been around, something like that?
We quit counting, Mike.
I hear you.
A long time. Yeah, you're right. We are pushing 40 years. It's right around the corner. Goodness gracious. Yes.
And so what, January edition out yet?
So we are pushing to finish up our distribution, and hopefully the U.S. mail will be out before Christmas time, so everybody can see their January 2024 issue, and it's a dandy. The cover's got 8 monster bucks on it. It's fantastic. It really is awesome. So we encourage everybody to pick it up and read the stories. Everything from a 15-year-old taking a 206-inch monster, non-typical buck. So that should get you going. You know, it's speaking of that 15-year-old, it's ironic, Mike. I've just noticed going through all the stories, doing all these stories, how young our hunters are becoming, which is fantastic. Which, I mean, it's a good thing.
Oh, that's wonderful.
A good thing.
Wonderful.
The one story I did on Blake Spencer, who took a monster buck up in Tuscola County, you know, he's talking and he says, well, you know, I've been hunting for 12 years. And I go, no, you're only 20, Blake. You're only 20 years old. He goes, yeah, I've been hunting since I was 8. So it's fantastic, you know, and they're good hunters too. That's what makes it even better. So it's really neat. And the other thing is, geographically, as you look at those 8 pictures on the cover, they cover from the Thumb area to the west side, all across Michigan. So it's neat to see that big bucks are coming from everywhere now too.
How many issues in 2023 had a buck on the cover? I bet most of them did. I mean, it didn't matter what time of year, right?
All of them. Yeah, you're right. If we found a story of a big buck, we love to feature it on the cover for sure. Yeah. Yeah, there was only a few summer issues that we didn't have them. Yeah.
So what about the January? What about the January edition? What are we going to see in that?
So in addition to all the great buck stories, you know, we got a great Mark Romanek did a fantastic story. We're always wondering if there's going to be ice or if there's not going to be ice.
Mm-hmm.
Mark said, hey, let's be ready. Let's Saginaw Bay. If there's ice, we're going to do this. If there's no ice, we're going to get our boat out and we're going to do this. So that's a great strategy, a great philosophy I think we should take going into this winter. And on top of that, we've got numerous first ice stories, tips, techniques on fishing the ice, and always got our wonderful features. And what's back this year in the January is trail camera page that we've kind of lost for a couple months, and it's always popular to see what people find on their trail cameras, and it's great entertainment to see some of those shots that people send us. So that's back in the January 2024 issue as well, Mike.
And just around the corner here, if folks want to see you guys in person, I'm sure you'll be at the Ultimate Fishing Show in Detroit.
Absolutely. We sure will. We'll be down there in the Suburban Show Place with back issues for free, and we'll have some subscription specials going on. So please stop in and see us, and it's a great time to share stories with us as well.
Tom Campbell never gets tired of hearing deer stories.
That's right. You got that, Mike.
All right, Tom, always a pleasure. Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year, and we'll talk again.
All right. Thank you. Same to you and your family, Mike.
I appreciate that. Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews, the website woods-n-waternews.com, woods-n-waternews.com. I always say Woods-n-Waternews, Michigan's premier outdoor publication, and I stand by that. Another great publication, though, is Michigan Out of Doors Magazine, put together by the folks from MUCC. In my mind, 2 different types of publications, but both of them very, very good. We will take a break here for the top of the hour. When we come back in our second hour, I want to talk more about deer hunting with the DNR's top deer guy. His name is Chad Stewart. Then Justin Tomei of MUCC checks in, and this week's Ask Avery question about how old the kids have to be to wear a life jacket. You're saying, why are you talking about this now? There's still a lot of open water. That and more coming up in hour 2 of Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And I always say the best way to listen to this show, if you can, is on your local radio station, your local AM or FM station. And I think we finally got a handle on the problem with the second hour of the show repeating. That problem has never originated here in the studio, and it has never been a problem with your local affiliates. It was something else, and I think we've got it solved. So thank you for your dealing with that while I was dealing with that as well. As I say, this is a radio show. I hear from people all the time, hey, I heard your podcast. I heard your podcast. Well, that's great. I appreciate that. Where'd you hear it? Oh, on W whatever radio station. Well, that was the radio show. It is nice to know, though, if we have an occasional technical problem or if your local radio station doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, it is nice to know that there's a podcast version of the show available. You can hear that on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, on my Facebook page, on all of the different podcasting platforms, including YouTube. I also do a podcast for some of my advertising partners, including Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest Boats, and Primal Outdoors. And I'm working on a couple of new podcasts I think you're going to find very, very interesting. Regardless, though, of when you are listening to my voice or how you are hearing my voice, whether it's the broadcast version or the podcast, I do certainly appreciate it. I've been doing this a long, long time. I do not plan to retire anytime soon, but as I like to say, my plans and God's plans do not always align. So, but I'm hoping I'm going to be around for a while, and I appreciate your support in helping me get to this point. Here's something else I need your support on. I can't shoot a doe. It's been my quest all season. Can you believe this? My quest for this season was to shoot a big fat Michigan doe, and I haven't been able to yet. I know you're going to say, well, Avery, you're not doing it. I get it. I'm not doing it right. Here's what I'm thinking. Because I can't shoot a doe, it must be the Michigan DNR's fault, right? Because the DNR gets blamed for everything. Especially when you start talking about deer, right? Who are you going to blame? We're going to blame Chad Stewart. He's the DNR's big game specialist, their deer specialist. I say that in jest because Chad is with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Chad, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Haven't heard that one before.
No, never heard that one, have you?
No, that's a new one.
So how you doing, Chad?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing good. I am, honestly, though, I'm not asking for much. I'm not asking the dear gods for much, and I still have some time, so I am gonna stay at it. But listen, I want to talk about the rest of the state here. From your perspective there in Lansing as the head deer guy, as you look back to what, for the most part, a season that is almost over, what do you see?
Yeah, the numbers that were coming in, of course, we have our harvest reporting that we can now look at and give us at least somewhat of a pulse that we think, is that the deer harvest is down compared to last year at least. Statewide, we're down about 11%, and that, of course, varies whatever part of the state you're in. It could be different. In the southern lower, harvest is down about 6.5%. Northern lower, it's down about 16%. In the UP, it's down about 26%.
26.
Now, yeah, it's a big difference than last year. I will say that this is only our second year of going through this. If reporting rates vary at all, that could certainly influence some of those numbers. I am expecting the overall numbers to be down, but we're still trying to figure out what that reporting rate looks like, and eventually that should stabilize, and maybe it has stabilized already. But given that we only have one previous year of data to work off of, we're sort of tempering things a little bit, although we hear from a lot of hunters and understand that the numbers are down in some areas of the state, and that will likely translate in the harvest to being lower this year.
For the sake of conversation, for right now, let's assume those numbers are fairly accurate. What do you attribute that to, Chad, the decrease?
I think it depends on what part of the state you're in, right? I think in the Upper Peninsula, we have low deer numbers across a pretty broad area. Now, we've got a pretty good performing model that uses previous year's weather data and camp survey data. We always do a camp survey. Our staff does up there, and it does a really good job at predicting what next year's harvest looks like. Last year, it predicted that this year's harvest in the UP would be similar to what it was last year, and obviously that's down a little bit. So, I think that's something that's worth looking into and trying to reevaluate what that model looks like. But we know that it's a tough go up there in the Upper Peninsula with very low deer numbers, especially on that west end and some of those northern units as well. And then as you get down into southern Michigan, I think most people would agree that we don't have a shortage of deer. But one thing we saw this year was that the corn harvest was very, very late. Going into that opening of firearm season, the report that I got from the Ag Service said that about 50% of the corn was harvested. Typically, it's between 66 and 75% at that time. So a lot more standing corn certainly impacts hunter success rate and even deer visibility. And that corn stayed standing for quite a while as the fields were pretty wet and it's difficult to get that corn out.
Yeah, in the southern part of the state, there's no doubt when you've got standing corn, it makes it tough for deer hunters.
Yeah, and I absolutely think that was part of the story in southern Michigan this year. And then when you look at, the impacts regionally, in other states, especially at our latitude like Wisconsin's and Minnesota's, they were seeing the same thing. So I do think that there is a regional component that sort of impacted deer hunters across a broad area at a landscape level.
Let's go back to the UP, down 26%. Is it because there were fewer hunters? Is it because there are fewer deer? I mean, you said there are fewer deer, but as a result, are fewer hunters going up there? So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in some ways?
Yeah, that's the sort of the what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? It's do declining deer numbers translate into lower hunter numbers, or do lower hunter numbers translate into lower deer harvest? I can tell you that from a statewide perspective this year, we did not see a decline in at least licensed buying behavior. Overall, licensed buyers were up, I think, either 1.5% or 2% from last year. Now, we know that not everybody that buys a license gets out into the field. So that's, again, something that we develop an estimate from our survey in terms of what we call effort, which is basically how many hunters are actually going into the field and how long they're spending out there. So that's part of the story that is yet to be, I guess, told, and because that takes a little bit more time to develop. But certainly, I think it probably makes sense that as people go up there and are seeing low deer numbers, it probably does impact their participation.
So why are deer numbers down? And more importantly, is there anything can be done about it?
That's the $1 million question, right? We've been on sort of a downward trajectory for at least my almost 10 years with the agency. There have been periods of recovery. I know my first introduction to UP deer management was in 2014 and 2015, when deer numbers were at a extremely low level. I think we were only shooting about 17 or 18,000 deer across the entire Upper Peninsula. And then in about 2018 and 29, our numbers seemed to recover a little bit. They were up over 30,000 again, and now we're trending downward again. I think that's kind of the pattern that we're looking at for the foreseeable future. And I think a lot of that has to do with one is the winter habitat that's available for deer. There's certainly, my understanding is there's a lot less aspen cutting that's going on up there as well. So that's certainly impacting things. And then obviously the conversation with predators is not going to go away. So, the discussions with coyotes and wolves and what role they play on the deer herd is certainly going to be paramount over the next coming months as we continue to talk with sportsmen.
Chad, listen, I got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show, but you bring up wolves, and I told you ahead of time we're gonna have to talk about wolves. When we come back after this break, I realize you are not the DNR's wolf specialist, but if we're talking about deer numbers, we got to talk about wolves. So hang tight, Chad. We'll address that and more coming up after the break. We're talking with Chad Stewart, who is the deer specialist for the Michigan DNR. He's the guy who gets a lot of attention, a lot of grief in talking about Michigan deer. I've said before, I wouldn't want Chad's job. I wouldn't, because you're not going to make everybody happy. There's no doubt about that. But the issue of wolves in the UP is a big issue. Don't blame the DNR for not having a wolf hunt. The DNR has a plan in place for when the feds allow a wolf hunt. Blame the feds, blame the federal judges, blame the anti-hunters who keep lobbying the federal judges. That's who you want to blame for not having a wolf hunt. We need one. I think there's no doubt about that. I can't imagine anybody in their right mind who is a conservationist saying that we don't need a wolf hunt. More coming up after the break. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots. Now, I realize you're not putting in food plots right now, but you are likely hunting over food plots. I have been hunting over food plots, hoping that, we can get some cold weather, maybe some snow that'll bring these deer into these food plots during the daylight. I haven't been having any luck lately, but Killer Food Plots. My point was, you're not putting in food plots right now, but this is the time of year to actually be thinking about food plots. As you sit there over that food plot, how can I do things differently next year? How can I do things better next year? What changes can I make? Well, Michigan-based, family-owned Killer Food Plots can help you out with that. Check them out online at killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. Talking right now with Chad Stewart of the Michigan DNR. He's the head deer guy. Chad, that's an interesting role to be in, I got to believe.
It is, yeah. It's enjoyable. It's a topic that is filled with a lot of passion, but you wouldn't really want it any other way, right? Because if people aren't passionate about white-tailed deer, then they start to lose value. So sometimes it's difficult to navigate some of that passion, but I think with level-headed discussions and trying to point to data, I think most people can understand if the time is invested to understand sort of the complexities of deer management.
A lot of that passion right now being directed at the UP, the low deer numbers. And what I'm hearing from my friends in the UP, Chad, is that they're seeing more wolves than they are deer.
Yeah, we hear the same conversations. We've had certainly quite a bit of individuals reach out to individuals in our department during and as the deer season's been going on, saying the same thing. So we can understand, I guess, the frustration and the correlation that's being witnessed between low deer numbers and certainly more wolf tracks on the landscape.
Unfortunately, your hands, you being the department, for now, your hands are tied on the issue of a wolf hunt. Now, I realize this isn't your area of expertise, right? But when you talk about deer management, we got to talk about wolves being a factor, right? But there's nothing you guys can do about it at this point.
Yeah, you're right. I'm limited in how deep I can wade in this topic because it's just not my area of specialty. But everything you're saying is correct. Right now, wolves in certainly the Midwest, the Great Lakes states are classified federally as endangered species, and the states do not have control over management. Now, I think it was in 2019, don't quote me on that year, but it was around that time, there was an open call for, the proposal to remove gray wolves from the endangered and threatened wildlife list, and we wrote and supported that. We actually strongly supported removing those federal protections and returning their management to the state. We sit here in 2023 going into 24, and they're still under management from the federal agency. So our hands are tied right now with wolves.
It used to be in the old days that if you wanted to hunt deer in Michigan, you went to the UP because we didn't have a lot of deer downstate, but man, the UP was full of big swamp bucks, and that's where people went. Is there a concern, Chad, that we could lose part of this UP deer hunting tradition? I mean, if the numbers stay down and if hunters aren't going there, if they're not having success, is that a concern?
Yeah, I do think there's that concern long term. And now I have a lot of faith in whitetail deer, right? I mean, they've been around, and I mean, they've been hunted by saber-toothed cats. They've been around that long. I do think that they're an incredibly resilient animal. I don't have fear of them, blinking out of a landscape. I think we'll continue to have whitetail deer in the Upper Peninsula. I do think that numbers are certainly very low right now, and I believe that they're going to continue to be low for the foreseeable future based on some of the, things that are influencing those numbers and how long it takes to try to shift or pivot away from those influences and what that entails.
Let's turn our attention to downstate here a little bit. We're almost at the end of the season. You've had several years in the job now. You've heard all these different proposals come at you. I'm $1, earn a buck. Is there anything like that in Michigan's future? Is there a role for something like that in Michigan's future?
Sitting here today, I don't know if I have an answer for you, but one of the things that we're doing this upcoming year is we're diving into that. And it's not just like the DNR diving into this. We're going to be putting together different stakeholders and even unaffiliated hunters that are going to be participating in these discussions. We're calling it a deer management initiative, where we recognize that there's a lot of challenges both in the Lower Peninsula and the Upper Peninsula. Things are different with lower hunter numbers, and what needs to change and what's going to be supported and what does the data support. So we're getting a bunch of folks together. We're in the process of putting that list and what that plan looks like right now to start having those conversations. And I'm sure $1 rules, APRs, everything that you've heard and that I've heard will be part of that discussion through these groups.
All right, let's talk more about that process. So you bring people together, you talk about what should happen with Michigan deer management. Then what happens to that information? What happens to those thoughts, those findings?
Yeah, so our idea right now is that once this group gets put together, that they will bring forward what I'm calling short-term recommendations and then long-term recommendations. Something short-term that can be accomplished would go towards both the DNR and the Natural Resources Commission. And, with DNR biologists being in the room with these stakeholders and discussing, things that we support, I hope that if we can bring it forward through the DNR and through the NRC for those short-term changes, that they would be supported because they would be coming from both the agency and a group of stakeholders that would sort of co-develop what those short-term recommendations look like. Now, the long-term recommendations are basically trying to start building a process to make, bigger change. And I don't know what that would necessarily look like, but, very little in state government, especially deer management, can be accomplished by just flipping a switch, right? Like otherwise we could just turn our low deer numbers in the UP to high deer numbers. We could turn our high deer numbers in parts of our agriculturally dominated Lower Peninsula into lower deer numbers. And we know that we can't do that easily. It takes a longer process. So what needs to be done long-term to try to affect that change, and how can we start moving in that direction?
Well, and that was my next question. It's not like, say, you're managing a walleye population where you can go in there and just stock more fish, plant more fish. When you're talking about whitetails, it's a harder process. And I'll go back to the UP again. Forget about wolves for a minute. I mean, you look at the habitat issue up there. Man, that's generational. That takes time.
100%. Yeah, and that's why I think, the expectation that just touching one little component of the UP is going to make our UP deer herd 180 degrees in a different direction is not realistic. nature is very complex. There's a lot of things going on, and a lot of that takes time to develop, especially just as you said, Mike, habitat takes years and years to develop, especially some of that winter habitat, which can be slower growing. When you talk about things like cedar or hemlock, it takes time for that to develop. So we need to start working towards that and making sure those protections are in place, but it's not going to be a quick fix either.
And also another factor I hear about, from the department is severe winters. The way Mother Nature's going, you might lose that excuse, Chad, the way our winters have been lately.
Yeah, I'm not certainly a climatologist or anything like that, but my understanding is that the frequency of the severity of the winters is increasing. So what's happening, I think, in many cases, is that Lake Superior is not freezing over like it has in the past, and it's not doing that in successive years. And what that does is it is a snow-making machine when that doesn't happen. So it's creating much higher snowfalls, and obviously that's stressing our white-tailed deer herd in ways that it hasn't historically.
And we've talked this whole time, and we haven't brought up something, and I'm so glad that we haven't brought it up till now. Chronic wasting disease, CWD. For a while, Chad, every time we talked, that's what we talked about.
Yeah, I would like to point out that you were the one that brought it up this time.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
So I think it's part of the discussion long term, and I think maybe that's where maybe the misinterpretation or the miscommunication on our end happens, is that WD is what we view as a long term impact to our deer herd, but in terms of seeing impacts this year, next year, most people are not going to see that. We're looking at what other states are seeing, that have a 20-year, 30-year head start on us in trying to prevent us from getting down that stage. So I think it's definitely part of the conversation, and we're doing certainly a lot of conversations and work internally for surveillance around that. But it's something that we're going to be living with in the future. It's just how can we make sure that it's not going to be a future topic of discussion like weather impacts or wolves or anything like that in the future. What can we do today to prevent that conversation from happening 20, 30 years from now?
And the reason I brought it up is if there's anything positive about CWD, when it first came out here, I mean, my sense was the sky is falling. Our deer herd's in grave danger. We've had it for a few years now, and we still have deer. So I maybe it's not the end of the world that we first feared.
Yeah, the other bonus to that is that we've been doing a lot of searching for chronic wasting disease in other parts of the state, and by and large have not found it, certainly with any type of frequency that we found in Montcalm County or Kent County when those discussions first started happening. So certainly a few new counties have popped up positive, but it's not as widespread as maybe we initially feared based on some of our limited surveillance that we've been doing to date.
Chad, I always appreciate your time. I think one of the recent times we talked for the entire hour. I can't do that this time, but I think you and I could fill that time, and I appreciate it. And we'll talk again.
Thanks, Mike. Happy holidays.
Same to you. Chad Stewart of the DNR, Michigan.gov/DNR, Michigan.gov/DNR. A lot of people are going to listen to this conversation and say, Avery, why didn't you ask him this? Why didn't you ask him that? Time is limited, my friends. More after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. And you can hear us in Ludington on News 97, 98, 98.7 WLDN. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination. The docks are in, the ramps are open, at least last I heard. And they're getting some big walleye on Saginaw Bay right now. Linwood Beach can be your jumping-off spot for Saginaw Bay walleye fishing. And if we do get ice, it's the perfect place to head out on your wintertime ice fishing adventure. That and much more as far as storing your boat, winterizing your boat, buying your boat. I mean, If it's boats and fishing on Saginaw Bay, Linwood Beach is your source. LinwoodBeachMarina.com, LinwoodBeachMarina.com. Turn our attention now to MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Clubs. Justin Tomei checking in this time. Justin, it's been a few weeks since we talked. How are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing real good. If I remember last time we talked, didn't you shoot a big bear?
They're getting a little sick of hearing about it in the office, but I did 332 draft.
332. Just happened to know that number right off the top of your head. Well, congrats on that again. Mm-hmm. Hey, it's interesting that you want to talk about this deer management initiative. I just had Chad Stewart from the DNR on, and he was mentioning that there's a lot of anticipation around this group, isn't there?
There is, and everybody kind of knows where we're at with our doe population, especially in the southern lower. Chad put out that letter earlier in the year, and everybody sees the need to do something, but nobody seems to know really what to do. And I think that's what the DNR wants to solve with this, is go in with the stakeholders, with the department, with the NRC to an extent, and kind of not have any preconceived notions, not come in with anything. Everything is on the table, and see what we can come up with, both in the short term and long term, to better manage the herd.
All right, so when you talk about stakeholders, does the average Joe Blow Michigan deer hunter going to have any input in this at all?
So, yes, there's actually a couple options for just the average hunter to be involved. One, they could be involved through a stakeholder organization, whether it's National Deer Association, whether it's us at MUCC, but there is also an opportunity through the program, and I don't think that it's been rolled out formally yet, so I don't think you can apply yet, but there will be an application process for non-affiliated hunters, and actually some non-affiliated, non-consumptive users as well, to apply to be part of this group.
Oh, you just got my attention there. Non-consumptive users. What does that mean? That doesn't mean insurance companies, doesn't mean farmers, or does it?
It could. I don't think that level of specificity has been laid out yet, but it's, like I said, we're going into this with everything being on the table. And so if somebody is willing to, be involved that may not necessarily hunt, that has a unique perspective, that they're welcome to apply. But beyond that, it could also mean urban communities that have deer problems. I mean, I live in West Michigan, and I know Grand Haven's having some issues right now. Southfield is having deer overpopulation problems last year. So it could be municipalities joining as well.
Please don't tell me, Justin, though, that there's going to be an option for anti-hunting groups to have a say in this.
I don't make those decisions. I mean, I guess nothing would stop them from applying, but I would hope that the department would remember that who pays the bills for conservation in this state. So I would hope not.
Yeah, well, I would hope not as well. Hey, you know how things work in Lansing. How long will this take? Will we see something out of this group and out of these proposals and thoughts and suggestions for the fall 2024 season, or are we talking down the road?
I would not anticipate anything substantial being done in place for the 2024 season. Chad has an aggressive timeline laid out where maybe we're done by the end of the summer, but that would be a little late to do any substantial regulation changes for 2024. So more realistically, we're looking at 2025 season, but the report should hopefully be ready prior to 2024.
Anything going on? I mean, you're a policy guy, right? If I remember right, Justin?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So do you deal with the legislature and stuff, or are you more with the DNR and NRC side of things?
I do both. So I'm a registered lobbyist for MUCC, so I spend a lot of time down at the Capitol as well.
And those folks are all on break right now, I would imagine.
Yes, they're on break. We're not exactly sure when they're going to come back. So 2 Democrats won their mayoral election, so the House is actually a 54-54 tie right now. Unlike the Senate, there's no tiebreaker, so things are going to be different for the early part of the 2024 session. Everyone's going to have to play nice, and I'm not quite sure when they're going to be back yet.
Politics is not supposed to play a role in all this, but it does, doesn't it?
It does, and MUCC was founded because we thought that we should make these biological decisions as independently from political pressures as possible. But obviously some of that leaches into it because the legislature could come in and do something if they really wanted to. But we try and stop that whenever we can and educate these politicians that, they're not biologists, and we need to leave these decisions to the biologists and managers.
Justin, you have to stand in the breach. You're the guy who has to stop this from happening, all right? That's my charge to you.
I do my best.
No pressure there, huh?
Yeah, right.
All right, Justin, appreciate your time. We'll let you go. Justin Tomei of Michigan United Conservation Clubs, MUCC.org, MUCC.org. I wouldn't want Justin's job. I wouldn't want Chad's job. But, somebody's got to do those jobs, right? And I support MUCC. I think it's a great organization. Join MUCC. It only costs you a few bucks. Have a say in what's going on in our state right now. I think there's no better way to do that than joining a conservation group, your local sporting group, hunting and fishing, MUCC.org. We'll take a break. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery question wraps up this second hour of Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on WHTC in Holland. That's 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by the good folks from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoors men and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. You know how this segment works by now. This is your chance to get a question answered that's been bugging you. You can send a question to me, something you want me to answer directly, or something that you want me to pass along to somebody in a DNR or MUCC or something like that. This week's question, again, another question from Steve Miller of the Detroit Buck Club. And he brings a very interesting question to light. He said he was out on the water a few weeks ago with his kids, a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old. And the Coast Guard came by and said, hey, you got to have life jackets on both these kids. But there was some confusion on Steve's part because he said, he had read somewhere that you had to be 6 years old or 12 years old or whatever. So there seems to be some confusion here. How old do you have to be? At what age do you have to have life jackets on kids? Now, we all realize that, from a safety perspective, yeah, you want to have life jackets on everybody in the boat. But is that really realistic? When I have questions like this that I'm not the expert, I don't know. I go to the experts. This time around, our expert is Lieutenant Mark Papineau from the Michigan DNR. Lieutenant, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure is mine. I gave you this question ahead of time, so you knew, what I was going to be asking. So the crux of the question, which is it, 6 years old or 12 years old?
Yeah, so it's actually a very common question that we get. So, for example, this was obviously in the Great Lakes, going out fishing with the two young children. So in the Great Lakes, we have a shared regulatory authority with the U.S. Coast Guard. In most instances, the federal law enforced by the Coast Guard mirrors what the state has, but life jackets is one of those instances that's slightly different. So federal law actually requires people on board under the age of 13 to wear a life jacket. But there's a unique exception in the federal law that gives the authority back to the state to pick their own life jacket law, essentially. So, and in this instance, Michigan has a different life jacket regulation than what the feds accept. So it kind of becomes a mutual agreement between the state and the U.S. Coast Guard that the state law is basically the supreme law. And that's kind of where this gets confusing, because you have one regulation under 13 by the feds, but in Michigan, which is accepted by the Coast Guard as well, that all persons under the age of 6, when riding in the open deck of a boat, have to wear a personal flotation device. So it doesn't matter the size of the boat, the length of the boat. It all pertains to the same. Under 6 has to wear either a Type 1 or a Type 2 life jacket.
Well, that is interesting. I mean, I guess normally I would assume that federal law would supersede state law. And I can see where that would cause some confusion.
Yeah, there's a couple of regulations within the federal law for boating that give that right back to the state, and the state has the ability to either make it more strict or less strict, and then they just mutually accept whatever the other state or the state chooses in that matter. So, and this is just one of those instances, and we do get this one a lot. As the Coast Guard obviously wants to promote, the federal regulation for safety purposes, but even then, they're held to that under 6.
You know what? I got to be honest. If the coasties come up to me and and they tell me to do something, I'm probably going to do it just so I don't cause any waves, because I'm not out there to try to irritate people and get myself in trouble if I don't have to.
Well, yeah, and honestly, a life jacket worn is a life saved, essentially, or potentially. So it's always a good idea to wear a life jacket when you can.
Well, and people might say, well, why are you talking about this right now? The boating season's over. It's not. I mean, with this open water we've got across the state, there are a lot of people out on the open water, fishing open water right now.
They are. And when you posed this to me yesterday, I thought that same exact thing. I'm like, it's December. Why are we talking about life jackets?
Mm-hmm.
But that, we have that traditional line of thought that our boating season only runs between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And in reality, our water seasons, if you take the boating aspect even out, it runs all year. And hunting, waterfowl season potentially, ice fishing, and even snowmobiling. So obviously we encourage everyone to wear a life jacket no matter what age you are, or where you are on the water, on the ice. It can essentially save your life. And even for snowmobiles, for example, all of our officers are issued snowmobile gear with flotation in them. And we've had several instances on our own staff. They've gone through the ice, and that flotation in their snowmobile gear has saved their life. So it's not just boating, but life jackets are important year-round. And it's often forgotten about this time of year.
And you don't want to end up in the water this time of year for sure. Lieutenant Mark Papineau from the DNR, appreciate your expertise and your insight, and you can bet I will reach out to you again.
Anytime. Thanks.
I appreciate it. And again, thank you to the folks at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. Coming up in our second hour, speaking of open water fishing and ice fishing and fishing in general, Mark Martin will join us to talk about that, his fishing vacation schools, and more. And, of course, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's coming up in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3. That's right, 3 hours of outdoors every week here on the Outdoor Magazine radio show, and so blessed to be able to do that. So blessed to be able to talk about something that I love so much. This is part of who I am. This is part of who my family history is. Hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping. And I'll be honest with you, I don't pretend to be very good at it. I can catch my fair share of Saginaw Bay walleye in the summertime, but pretty much everybody who goes out there can. I can usually get a turkey in the springtime. Bears, I usually get a bear on my bear hunt. Deer hunting, now that's a whole different topic. I guess I just don't know what I'm doing. I haven't been able to shoot a doe yet, but I've still got some time. So my point is, I don't pretend to be an expert at anything, even broadcasting. But I have much passion and much respect for people who are experts. And thank God for those people, because those are the people that I can reach out to talk knowledgeably about topics here on the radio show. To hear me talk about them for 3 hours would be a pretty boring show. And there might not be a lot of great information put out there by me. But when I bring in people like Mark Martin, everything changes. You know Mark. Mark's been on the fishing scene here in Michigan forever. He first became known trolling the Muskegon Channel, Muskegon Lake at dark. In fact, it was Mark Martin who, I don't want to say forced, but the master angler size weight in Michigan used to be 9 pounds. They had to raise it because Mark Martin kept bringing in so many clients with 9-pound fish that they had to raise it to 10 pounds and then 11 pounds. And people said, yeah, he's good at night. He's a good fisherman at night, but that's all he can do. Well, not true. Because when Mark expanded his horizons from chartering, guiding at night, to fishing the professional walleye circuit, he won the first national championship walleye tournament, the championship. That quieted people down, right? And these days, so many years later, Mark is still out there. He's got his fishing vacation schools. He does seminars. He does a lot of writing. He does a lot of social media. He does a lot of educating. And I like to give him the opportunity to use this platform, the radio show, to do some education as well. Mark, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, not too bad. Thanks for the great introduction, Mike. You humble me.
It's all true, though. There's not a half truth in what I said.
No, I definitely agree. I just, I appreciate it, and I appreciate people that appreciate what I've done, and I like teaching, and like you were saying, and I like what brings joy to Mark Martin's heart is seeing these people I've taken out, seeing the people that I've taught come back with emails, come up to me at sports shows, come up and write letters and tell me how much of a difference I have made in their life, and that's what really keeps me going. And now I got a pro staff that I'm taking, a bunch of them I take under my wing, kind of like Roach and Linder did to me when I was, that age, and, helping them, plot their course in their fishing career, and I see some of them, most of them have really grown, and some of them are really taken off, some of my pro staff. So I sit back and just, this is fun, this is, seeing the fruits of my labor, not only prosper with me, but prosper with the people that I help.
Did you ever dream as a kid when you were trolling Muskegon Lake after dark with your granddad, dragging a chain to get the right depth and putting out milk jugs so you could follow the contours? Did you ever dream that things would end up for you as they have?
No, I didn't even. It was the farthest from my dreams. I just wanted to catch fish, and then I wanted to teach people to catch fish, or I got to the point back, and I guess it was I don't know, I was getting laid off a lot. I'd work and get laid off, and it was those times right there that I went, there's one thing that I can't get laid off from is if I get a captain's license and I start guiding. People wanted me to, but I knew I better not unless I had a captain's license, because I would never be a captain if they caught me.
No, got to do it the right way.
You got to do it the right way. And so I did, and it's been a blessing ever since that I've been able to, I've made a great living because people wanted, like you were saying, to come and catch a trophy for the wall. And at that time, the lakes were full of them, and the best way to get them was at night when the predator instincts of these walleye really got triggered. And, almost, I can't say every night, but in the beginnings, it was, at least 3-4 times a week, if not more.
What's the key to catching fish?
Well, understanding the fish that you're after and what they do in the seasons, and that's why I wrote one of my books, Catching Walleye, Fishing the Four Seasons, and I go through the four seasons and talk about where they should be, what to look for, how to find them. And that's what you got to know is they aren't, where you find them in the springtime, you might find some in the same place in the summer and maybe in the fall again. But, they have specific things and traits that they do. In the spring they go up and spawn, and some of them linger all year long. But very few. So you have to understand when they migrate back where they're going to go, where the mass numbers are going to be. There's always going to be a few that are exceptions to the rules, and I know that. But you're looking for catchable numbers, not, I know there's one or two here, So that's why I wrote books, and that's why I keep teaching and kind of, try to take and impress people how important it is to learn your species of fish that you want to catch. And if you are able to do that, but the other big thing that goes right along with that, find like-minded people like yourself and go fishing with them, because you know who's better, or you may think who's better than you, but you start fishing and get to be friends with them kind of people, kind of like I did with Al Linder and Gary Roach and a bunch of other ones. I realized in the end that, I learned a lot from them, business-wise, and I learned a lot from them fishing-wise, but I didn't realize I knew what I did know, but it was because of my parents and my grandparents, instilling some of the stuff early in my life that held true all my life. It still holds true in a lot of cases, but they filled in a few things, and then I watched how they worked. I watched how they fish, and we fished a lot together. And I realized, wow, it's not the big things. It's not, I got to do this or do that. It's the little teeny things that you have to do to be successful. You have to, how you put things together to make that lure work, how to put that lure together, even though you bought it in a package. You might have to make a few tweaks in it to make sure that it actually is going to do what you want it to. So that's what I teach people, is the finer, tinier things, and that's what my pro staff, I hear them comment, because we do seminars every Sunday to the start of our schools, and a lot of them, I took them as students. I seen their drive, and I asked them to become teachers. And then they are good fishermen too, on top of it. And they tell the students in their own words, they'll go, hey, I came to this school looking for that magic lure that I know Mark had in his tackle box that he never talked about. And then I come here and find out I had that same lure in my tackle box, but I didn't put it together the right way, and I didn't fish it the right way. And that's what I try to do, is help people get to that point that they choose the right lure. And when they go to a store, they're probably going to help the salesperson out as much as anybody.
Hang tight, Mark. There's so many things I want to talk to you about. We're talking with Mark Martin. Mark. His websites, a couple of them, fishingvacationschool.com. We'll talk more about that after the break. And markmartins.net, markmartins.net. I want to talk to Mark about, he mentioned the 4 seasons of fishing. Are we fully in a winter season now? We'll talk about this after the break. Are we kind of between seasons? Also, he talked about the business of fishing. I want to know if the business of fishing, is that like any other business, or is there something special when you get into the business of the outdoors? That and more with Mark Martin, fishingvacationschool.com, markmartins.net. Mark Martin coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM 95.3 FM. And you can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Premier Maritime Training. If you've ever wanted to get your captain's license, I think this is your best bet. Captain John Littlefield taught my captain's class, and he can help you become a licensed charter captain as well. Check out the website, pmtcaptains.com, for more info. John has classes across the state, and I'm sure you can find one to fit your schedule. Be honest, you've thought about this before. But the thing about becoming a licensed charter captain is not just for guiding or a charter captain. It's also for river cruises. It's also for dive boats, tow boats. You got to be a licensed captain. Wintertime is a great time of year to get those license. PMTcaptains.com is the website, PMTcaptains.com. I'm talking right now with, I think he's still got his captain's license, Mark Martin. Mark, you still a cap?
Yes, I am. I'm according to Kendra, I think, at the DNR. We talk a little bit, and I've had my license. There's only a couple more guys that have had it longer than I have. For my age and everything like that. So I've had one since I was in my early 20s, and I'm 67. I just turned 67.
Well, happy birthday.
And thank you. And it's something that I treasure. It's something I don't take lightly, and I kind of am surprised when people go, "Oh, I don't need it no more. I'm never going to use it." Well, and that's part of what you were talking about, business. It's a business thing. I may not go and take people's money to guide, but my insurance is a lot cheaper for the schools if I have a captain's license. And when I do anything that is around the water, my insurance is cheaper because I got a captain's license. Because they feel that you're responsible. To get that captain's license. Like my doctor told me, he goes, "Man, this is more rigorous, physical than an airplane pilot." He goes, "I can't believe what they're asking me to do to you to make sure you're physically fit." And he said, "Airplane pilots don't have to even do this." A captain of an airplane, I guess they put us fishing charter captains and captains of boats in even higher regard of people, so I guess it's dangerous out there, which I know it is. That's part of the business. If you want to be in the business and you want to make money at it, you better have a captain's license.
I know I worked hard to get my license, and I went through the class and took my test when I was not a young man, and maybe my brain wasn't as sharp as it was when I was younger. But I'll tell you what, parts of that test, the navigation and stuff, man, it was a challenge. And when I got that license, like you say, I'm never going to let it go. I may not take paid clients out, but I'm never going to let that license go.
No. It's a benefit to your business, and it's a business for your broadcasting. I mean, people. Hey, well, Mike, it helps you get sponsors. That little captain in front of your name, people respect. That they know you you just didn't buy it off of a Cracker Jack box. You had to go through it. And back in the day when I did this, there were no schools like you were just talking about. I mean, there were, but they're far and few between. And I just bought the books that I needed.
Oh man!
I bought, and I did it all by myself.
Oh, no,
I had
thanks.
Yeah. I know. I look at it.
No,
and go,
thank you.
and so I knew it. What was kind of cool was I went to take the test. I didn't have no teacher. There was a class. there was a class at that they're graduating and they're trying to get their license. So I just happened to be there with that class, and the teacher started asking questions amongst his students, kind of refreshing them. And I'm just standing there listening, and like some people weren't raising their hand and trying to answer it or whatever. And I'd go, and I raise my hand, and everybody like, well, who's he? And I'd answer the question, and then I'd wait till the last thing. If nobody answered it, I'd pipe up, and I was having fun, and the class liked me, and the teacher liked me, and I wasn't trying to take over it. I just wanted to see, hey, is Mark Martin worthy to take this test today? I wanted to see what, so I answered all of his questions to his class, and we went in and to take the thing. Well, I'm like, yeah, I know this isn't going to be real hard, so I sit down, they lay it out in front of me, and I just go, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, and I'm the first one out the door. And so they come back out the door when everybody's outside, and they tell you who passed and who basically failed. I failed.
Ooh.
And everybody turned and looked at me and go, well, what happened to you? And the teacher said, I know what happened to Mark. He did not look for will, shall, and can in the answers, or not the answers, but the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And those are key words. That you will do it. Shall, well, it could be this or it could be that. And, so you were looking for key words when you were. So the next time I wasn't the first one out the door. Because you only get one thing of the test to fail, and I failed it. And the rest of the day I passed them, including they gave me the same section, but in different wordings and stuff like that, but I passed it that time. So I was like, wow, I made it.
Well, you talk about the business of fishing. If somebody wants to succeed in the world of fishing, however it is, you have to approach it as a business, right? It's not a hobby. It's not a pastime.
Right.
If you're going to do it, you got to do it right.
Right. It's just like anything, you got to jump right in and do it to the best of your ability. And what I tell people, because I go and speak at schools as a professional athlete, pay attention in school. That's the first thing, because Mark Martin didn't. I just kind of lollygagged my life through school, and the teachers were like, yeah, what a kid he is, He's never going to make it.
You struggled for a word there for a minute.
Yeah, right. I had to word it right here. and so he's never going to make it type, attitude they had about me, because all I wanted to do was fish. Well, when I came back to my schools, and I was one of the speakers, here's some of my old teachers there, and they told me that. They came up and they go, we're proud of you, Mark, that we can't believe you are where you are today and can do what you do, because you didn't prove that to us. I said, hey, if I'd have listened to you, I'd be further ahead right now than I am. I had to teach myself what I should have been learning from you in school to further myself in the fishing industry, so I could write books. I could write articles. I could do things that that you guys were trying to teach. I mean, I've gleaned some things and remembered enough that I graduated, but I needed more structure that I just blew off, and I try to tell kids that. And the other thing I tell the kids is, when you go and to take something, whatever you want to do, nowadays you're going to need social media skills. You're going to need to be able to take pictures well. You're going to be able to have to be a public speaker. You're going to have to know a lot of things. So, make sure when you go on from this, what you want to do. And I'll say, how many of you here, they want to be a professional football player? And how many want to be a baseball player? How many want to be fishermen, hunters? And the hands go up all over in the room, and I said, okay, that's great. I says, now I'm going to ask you another question. How many of you have been told, because you probably asked your parents, your friends, or other people, about doing that kind of stuff, and how many of them said you can't do that? And at least 3/4, maybe half to 3/4 of their hands go back up. And I said, I understand. I says, because when I said that's what I wanted to be when I was 5 years old to my dad on a reel-to-reel tape, and I still have that reel-to-reel tape of my sister and I, he said, you can't do that. But when I won the world championship, he had a big dinner, and he pulled that reel-to-reel out. And my sister and my dad and I, we knew what it was, but the rest of the family never heard it. And he turned it off, and he goes, hey, Mark, maybe I was wrong. So when your dad can look you in the eye from across the table, and he knows that you actually made something of what you said you wanted to do when you were 5 years old, he probably wanted to do it, but in his day, there wasn't the kind of opportunities it was when I was growing up. So I tell kids, whatever you got in your heart, keep it in your heart, and don't let anybody tell you you can't do it, because you live in America. You can be anything you want to be. And that usually, that impressed my teachers.
It impressed me to hear you say it. I agree with you completely, but to hear you say it was pretty darn cool. Listen, Mark, we didn't even get to some of our other topics, so can I offer you the coveted third segment so we can actually talk more about fishing?
Yeah, right. We got off, didn't we?
Let's talk about everything else other than fishing. So we'll do that. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll actually talk a little fishing with Mark Martin. FishingVacationSchool.com, MarkMartins.net. I do want to go back to those questions I talked about. What season are we in right now? Are we actually in the winter season, or are we between fishing seasons? And finally, I got to let Mark put a plug in for his fishing vacation schools. And I wonder, is Mother Nature going to cooperate this year? Is he going to be able to be on the ice or not? I don't know the answer to that. I don't think Mark knows, but we'll see what he has in mind. And then, of course, after that, we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's all coming up yet this week right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Manistee and WMLQ 97.7 FM. You can hear us in Manistee and WTIQ 1490 AM 95.3 FM. And you can hear us in Saginaw on News Radio 790 WSGW and 100.5 WSGW as well. I'm in the studios of WSGW here right now with Charlie Rood. Charlie doing a great job. He's enjoying some of the Michigan brand products that I brought in here today. Charlie, always appreciate your help. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard, as they have for me. Right now, you're thinking about a few things. Dormant trimming. Great time to trim things up. Guys can come out and they can see what they're working with. And if you're thinking we're going to get snow and you don't want to shovel it, I don't care if it's at your house or your business, Reader can take care of you. In fact, they do the snow removal for our church. Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. While you are online, my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Also head over to fishingvacationschool.com and MarkMartins.net, two of the websites for Mark Martin. Mark, some things to get through here. We got just a couple minutes left. The season of fishing right now, are we fully in a wintertime fishing season, or are we kind of between seasons?
We're kind of, between seasons right now because of the conditions that we're experiencing. We should have ice. We do have ice in some places, but not every place. And that's what got to learn how to do ice dances, I guess.
Well, and because that's real important to you, not just from a recreational perspective, but you've got these fishing vacation schools coming up that you're going to need ice. You're at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Right. And right now, Houghton Lake was the first place that we're going to go to on the 7th to the 10th of January. They have ice in limited areas on that lake that they're actually fishing on, not the whole lake. Unless the whole lake is able to be accessed, we don't set foot out there because their motto is safety first. And last year was the first time we ever had to cancel Houghton Lake. But they say the bottom's going to drop out of that thermometer at the end of this month. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and hopefully everybody else is. And then we go from there to Mullet Lake, which last year that was kind of iffy, so we switched it to black, and we have that option again this year. So that's going to be January 28th to the 31st, the end of January, and then we got the big one on Saginaw Bay, which of course we didn't get in last year, and that one is February 11th to the 14th. So that's always a good one to, for the wives to give the husbands or come together for Valentine's Day out on Saginaw Bay. If it's safe, we're going.
What's the whole premise? What's the whole reason behind these, what you're calling fishing vacation schools?
It's, showing people how to do things right so that they're successful every time out. I can't impress upon people. And a lot of them want to come to the school, and show me that they can catch fish the way they've done it. Well, that's fine. But when you come and tell me you're not catching no fish, and I tell you to reel up, and I see a snap swivel on the end of your line, which I told you I don't want a snap swivel, or you got a snap on there, and it's something you use for a marlin. I mean, honest, I see they just think they got to have a lure down there and put bait on the lure any willy-nilly way, and we show the details on how to correctly start at the hook, put the hook on the right way on that lure, put the bait on the right hook on that lure, have the right snap for that lure, and place the swivel up above the lure where it's not going to interfere with the feel, the action of the lure. So we, kind of walk right through, and if they follow this and they do our jigging techniques the way we do, tell them. And a lot of times, we do some pretty outlandish things to get these fish to hit. And because of the caliber of guys I have helping me, we come up with new and interesting ways every year to catch them. In the last couple of years, I used to teach, and we all used to teach people that just, okay, the fish disappeared, hit the bottom and bring them back. Well, yeah, that works. You keep bringing them back and keep raising it up, and they go away, and you bring them back. And it's a constant yo-yo effect. And now we've learned that when you see that fish come in, and you can do that, if he and start coming up, well, he goes away. The next time, bring him back in, and when he comes back in, when you start coming up, start reeling it up, and then reel faster and faster, almost reel as fast as that reel can go. And those fish, now you're trolling up, not horizontal, and they know they're coming to the ice. They better get that bait before it hits the surface. And even if you pull it right out of the hole, a lot of times you can look right in the hole, and there he is. And then you drop it back down, and on the way down, they grab it. So we teach people a lot of tricks that they would never think of. In fact, I wouldn't have thought of it 10 years ago or 5 years ago. We have just, we come up with new things all the time, and a lot of stuff I see in magazines that, people picked up on that came from our school. So I feel proud about that kind of stuff too.
Do you have openings? I got to let you go. Openings, okay. Fishingvacationschool.com. Yep. Mark, always a pleasure. Good luck on the schools. Hopefully you'll get some ice. I know you'll get some fish, and you and I will talk again soon.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
You Merry as well. Christmas. Merry Christmas to you as well. Mark Martin here on the Outdoor Magazine Show, fishingvacationschool.com, markmartins.net. If you want to get involved in one of those fishing vacation schools, go to the website, fishingvacationschool.com, and you can sign up. Well, you can get more details there, and I think you can actually sign up right there. We will take a break. When we come back, we'll wrap this whole thing all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. Thank you so much for joining us. I wish you and your family a very Merry Christmas. Also want to wish my good friend, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a Merry Christmas and a welcome back. David, how you doing, buddy?
Very good, Michael, and Merry Christmas to you and yours and everybody else out there.
Appreciate that. What do you have for us this week?
Well, last week we had kind of an upscale menu for the venison Oscar, which was a little involved. I hope people tried it. And if you got any trouble making the hollandaise sauce, look up online and it'll tell you how to make it in a food processor. I mean, it'd be super simple. So, and then this week we've got comfort food. We have a venison meatloaf.
Perfect.
Well, this would be for about 4 portions, one large loaf or 2 smaller ones. You need about 2.5 to 3 pounds of ground venison, a medium to large onion diced fine, 3 cloves of garlic diced fine, and you're going to need about 6 to 8 strips of bacon. I would prefer the hickory smoked if possible. The maple might be a little sweeter, you know what I mean, for this dish. And you need about 5 or 6 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce, 1 to 2 cups of dried breadcrumbs, 3 beaten up eggs, a teaspoon each of basil and oregano, or a nice heaping teaspoon of Italian spice, either one. You need a can of beer to moisten, salt and black pepper to taste, and some ketchup. So the ketchup is going to go on the top, and you're going to grate as much pepper into this as you feel like you like, and you can actually grate some more on top of this. So in a large mixing bowl, break up the ground meat, add the diced onions and the garlic and the spices, and mix it up a bit. Get that kind of started along, and then add the breadcrumbs, eggs, and Worcestershire sauce. And it's going to be kind of dry, so you're going to add some beer to this. Mix it up so that you can, when you form a loaf, it's going to stay together. It's not going to kind of like fall down, and be too runny. So, and if it is a little too runny, then you can add some more breadcrumbs to this. So when you think you got it just right, microwave a small amount in just a little bit for a taste test. Now is the time to adjust seasonings if you like. If you wanted more pepper or more spice or more Worcestershire, go for it. So form the mixture into a loaf, and you can actually put this in loaf pans, or you could do it on a baking sheet. It has to be deeper than a baking sheet because you're going to need a little bit of water in the bottom. So you're going to take the bacon and it crisscrosses along the top, and then run a line of ketchup about 1 inch wide or maybe a little more down the top. So whatever you're going to bake this in, add some water and some more of the beer if you haven't drank it all yet. And you need about 350 degrees oven for maybe an hour, hour and a quarter, and then uncover it the last 15 or 20 minutes to brown this up a little bit. And that'll kind of help melt that bacon grease down into the loaf and give it added flavor. And then what you could do is, you could get a jar of brown gravy, beef gravy. You could use that for the top, or tomato sauce, whatever your family prefers. And this is a great way to use ground venison. We love it. Terry and I make this quite often.
Beer and ketchup. Okay, you got me there. And then if I could put a little grated pepper on the top, if I could put some, ground pepper on the top, I'm all in, David. Yep. I'm in. This is perfect.
Yep. It's a great comfort food this time of the year. Nice gray days. It'll kind of spice up your meal a little bit.
Well, the good news is by the time folks hear this show, it's officially winter, which means the days are going to start getting longer.
Don't they get shorter sooner?
Do they? Dave says they get shorter soon. No, I'm looking at Charlie.
Thursday's the solstice.
Yeah, so by the time people hear this show, days are just going to start to get longer. So, yeah. It still feels like it's dark all the time. We're awake right now anyway, right?
I know. It's gray, dark, and gloomy.
I know it. All right, David, listen, Merry Christmas to you and everybody else, and we'll talk again next week.
And you and your family and everybody listening out there.
Appreciate that, Dave. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Yeah, he had me going there for a minute. I'm thinking, well, yeah, days get longer after the first day of winter. So we got that to look forward to. You know what else we got to look forward to? And this is Christmas, right? The Christmas season. I get the fact Santa Claus and Christmas trees and presents. But listen, to me, the ultimate present for Christmas is not Santa Claus. The ultimate present is the real reason why we have Christmas. The real reason to celebrate Christmas is to celebrate the birth of Jesus. Right? The world is a weird place these days. It can be overwhelming. It can be depressing if you let it. And I've learned in my own life that I cannot get through life without help from something more, from something bigger. And for me, that's my faith. And faith relies on the fact that we have a Savior. And he was born. We celebrate at Christmas. So my wish for you is Merry Christmas. I'm not saying Happy Solstice. I'm not saying Happy Holidays. I'm saying Merry Christmas to you and your family. I hope you get a chance to get together. I hope you have a chance to just relax, put your feet up a little bit, maybe eat a little more food than you should. Yeah, share some presents, share some laughs. That's what it's all about. So Merry Christmas. My name is Mike Avery. The website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. I will be back here next week, and we'll be talking about a new year. Man, this year has flown by. Been a good year? I hope it has. Talk to you next week, my friends, right here on Outdoor Magazine.